Hello, and welcome to today's Uncommon Sense episode, Driving DevOps with Value Stream Management. I'm Joshua Barnes, and I would like to welcome you.
Hello, friends of Herbie. I am Steve Tendon, and I always begin with saluting the friends of Herbie, who are those close to the theory of constraints. Al.
Hi, I'm Al Shalloway, Director of Thought Leadership of Agile at Scale programs with the PMI. And those of you who are watching, see my cat, Brianna. She's also has the mantra, eliminate waste. And to her, if it's not meat, it's waste.
And Gary, if you can introduce yourself and get us going today.
Sure. Well, hello, everybody. I go by my middle name, Gary. First name is Cecil. So when you see my books, you may get confused. I am an author. I'm also a director of IT. Been working in this business for about 35 years. My books or my experience are really about fundamentally managing failing projects and managing very, very large projects, particularly in health IT. So I've managed a couple that were over 100 software developers and anywhere from 16 to 20 software development teams. So that's kind of my background. But before I ever got into that, I started out in manufacturing at Texas Instruments as a engineering project manager responsible for this advanced internet, or I should say, Interconnect manufacturing facility. In straight words, a printed circuit board shop. And I applied lean concepts there. Proved that this factory, when it was being built, was going to fail, and it did. We fixed it. It took us a lot of money to do that, about $52 million over 3 years to fix all the problems. So that kind of started my career in lean, and I became a consultant in that area using the very same tools that I used at Texas Instruments, and then went on from there to being a product manager, software product manager for Case Tools, and then in and out of professional services and sales and marketing functions in software for the last 35 years, including a Silicon Valley startup and also AVP of worldwide sales for the business division at Sybase. So I've kind of been around the block, done a lot of different things, all software development. That's me in a nutshell.
It's you in a nutshell. And let's see, here is your forthcoming book that will have the chat based on, and inside of the chat we've got some links to it.
Great, thank you. So this book is one of my most every time I write a book I say this is my most fun book to date. As I mentioned, I have great empathy for people who are trying to figure out how to do lean improvements, and was doing it for a living well before most people even knew it was a thing. And I've watched its slow adoption in the IT community over the last, say, 10, 15 years with interest. When the Pop and DX first came out with their book on lean practices applied to software, lean software development, at the time I was a little mixed feelings. And I was of mixed feelings because the world at large kind of divided. You know, the manufacturing folks and the rest of the business value streams, if you will, entities went to lean early on, back in the 70s and 80s in a big way. And so lean is not a new thing to them. In the IT community, we went to agile. And we went to agile for a different reason. We had a different problem to solve. And the problem that agile advocates were trying to solve was the fact that they were getting beaten up every day for missing release times, for missing, their costs and budgets and schedules and the other constraints of projects, and largely not due to any problems with their technology or their prowess in enabling, applications, but with the traditional project management life cycle. Now, the traditional waterfall model works really well if you're building a ship, an airplane, buildings, utilities, freeways, things like that, where when you get started, you really don't want to go think about changing in a significant way. So if I'm building a skyscraper, could I add 3 more floors to it? Yeah, but probably going to be not cost effective to do so. Same thing with a ship or anything else, right? But we live in a world which is very dynamic, where our customers' minds are changing all the time, driven a lot by their competition. So we needed to be a lot more flexible, a lot more adaptable in terms of how we approach software development. So I can remember at the start of my career being told, you can't get customers involved. Remember those days? They just weren't even allowed to talk to developers. That was just forgotten. So that changed, and the tooling around that started to change. Really started to see it with the case tools, and I was a case tool software product manager, so I was living the life, so to speak. The tool chains that I had functional modeling, data modeling, information modeling, process modeling, simulation modeling, object-oriented modeling, and ontology modeling, all as an integrated suite. So I watched the industry go through this, and the whole driver, if you will, from a business perspective, was to make sure that we could adapt and evolve and in support of our customers' needs. So that's really what Agile was about. And it's really a set of values and principles, as everyone well knows. In the meantime, back in the lean world, everybody was looking at flows for materials and information, and how can we make them more streamlined? How do we eliminate waste and so on? And so when the Pup and DX came out with their book, I was an advocate, but also concerned because it was a different mental model to start with. Also, I didn't think the infrastructure was in place to make that easy to do, because we were just starting to see the basic elements of things like, test-driven development and some integration pieces between software tools and automation of continuous integration practices. So that was still a relatively new thing. That's not the truth that we have today. Today we have quite amazing tool chains that integrate and automate and orchestrate flows. So it's a different paradigm, and now the project management community has got to make that evolution as well. And so that's what I'm really here to talk about. That's what my book is about. And should I also mention the premise, which is if this is just about value stream management, is just about tools for DevOps and CI/CD, it's going to be a short-lived industry. We've got to take those same tools for gathering metrics and for analyzing metrics and for making informed decision-making across all value streams, not just CI/CD and DevOps pipelines. So that's a major premise of my book. Let's take it the next step further. Yes, you do get great improvements, but we need to take it the next step further. And so before I turn the conversation back to others, let me make a point. So in my day job, I run an internal consulting team for a large federal agency. There's over 400 software development teams. And we initially started out providing configuration management support services. So we would monitor and audit how they do their configuration management practices and then help them improve and ensure they're following the policies that were authorized and using the tools that were authorized by the organization. About 18 months ago, the organization decided they were going to be DevOps, and it came down as a mandate. Never mind that there were no funds made available for it. Never mind that the tool chains were not available to the product teams, and just generally not thought out and not really put together a strategy. So once again, everybody struggled to figure out how to do that. So I have an internal team now that creates CI/CD pipeline configurations as reusable software factories that can be pulled down on demand from, say, Git, right? GitHub. And that's all very cool. And when we run a configuration, we watch what happens measured in microseconds. And so literally people can make changes to their code, stand up a testing environment, run the tests, and be off to the next code change in minutes, in theory anyway, right? And that's what we're all trying to achieve. But from a systems theory perspective, systems thinking perspective, that's a form of local optimization. So what good is it if we can create new code and test it and deploy it in minutes, multiple times a day, depending on the size of the organization, but we're not aligned with what's going on with the rest of the organization's value streams? So what's the sense? What's the purpose? So a main part of my book is saying, look, none of that's going to matter one bit. You're going to spend a lot of money investing in these tool chains, investing in the skills, investing in the infrastructure, and then not really see anything organizationally. because if you don't go that next step and figure out how to use those tools, and more importantly, the methodologies to align what's going on with DevOps back to the business drivers, then those investments are going to end up looking like they were wasted. All right. And I think that's the next step for this VSM industry is how do we take that next step and look at the value streams, not for just CI/CD and DevOps pipelines, but how do we integrate that work into a value stream management initiative that's looking across other value streams and where software is an enabler that helps eliminate waste and bottlenecks in those other value streams. Does that make sense to people?
Yeah, it sounds like if you get faster and faster in it being able to release, even if it's, releases that have a good software value, if the other value streams aren't aligned, what's the real outcome going to be?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Well,
so go ahead.
Yeah, I've got a question for you. I was actually, for the audience, Gary and I know each other from some collaboration discussing about value streams and things. And so let me give you the background for the question. So when the Phoenix Project book came out, I actually liked it. But when I read it, I said to myself, this is really about a 40-page book of Lean applied to DevOps, just expanded to make it an interesting story. And I don't mean that in a deprecating or bad way. It was a really great book. It highlighted in my mind DevOps, but as you are saying, the whole issue isn't DevOps. DevOps is a part of the value stream, and I think one of the reasons it's good to focus on it to some level, it's actually a place that is really mismanaged a lot. I mean, actually, DevOps doesn't even exist in a lot of places. You've got devs and they throw it over the fence to ops, and you can get some massive improvement just doing DevOps badly. Just talk to each other. So
which is originally what it was about.
What?
That's originally what DevOps was.
Yeah,
exactly. Strategy.
Exactly. I mean, if you just do that, it's like massive improvement. I can remember going into a client, years and years ago, like 10 years ago. And it was funny because we had it wasn't that big. It was a huge company, but this was a small division of it. So it wasn't that big, a few hundred people. And everybody was there. And I intentionally sought out the ops person. They weren't using DevOps back then. And it's actually probably before I'd even heard the term. But I remember saying I wanted to talk to him because in my experience, if there's one person who knows what's really going on in an organization and that's all you can talk to the head of ops because they catch all the crap. Anything that's wrong, they'll know about it. And most people don't even appreciate it. And in fact, they had just had a release where people had been talking about how ops was lazy and all this because they show up late after releases, not realizing these guys are putting in 36-hour, 48-hour straight days to fix up what the devs did bad. Anyway, so we started out with him talking about what was going on, and you could see there was this awareness. So there's no question DevOps is, in my opinion, one of the greatest opportunities in value stream management. But as you're saying, it's still just a piece of value stream management. So your book is titled DevOps. Actually, pull it back up again. DevOps.
Driving DevOps with value stream management.
Yeah, driving DevOps with value stream management. But are you talking about the whole value stream in that, or just how DevOps relates to everything else? I mean, why are we now putting so much attention on DevOps instead of considering it one chunk of the whole?
It's a really good question. So first off, I write for a company called Packet Publishing. They're based out of Birmingham, England. And what they do is they publish books about, I think, somewhere between 6,000 and 7,500 books and training courses for IT professionals, mostly software developers. And this is hardcore stuff, right? How do you do Ansible, and how do you do Jenkins, and how do you do robots for a particular application? And then they have people like me who write more at a management level. So how do you manage what software developers do and why? So the book was written largely to address the software community, but as I said, the premise of my book is this will be a short-term industry if it's limited to DevOps. So what is value stream management? Value stream management's been around for a long time. It wasn't called that until early 2000s. And a guy named Dan Tapping and his associates wrote a bunch of books called Value Stream Management, interestingly enough. One was for manufacturing, another was lean offices, basically administrative functions, another one for healthcare. And they went on to evolve a company called LeanFit. And so I applied their value stream management methodology to a CI/CD pipeline improvement effort. So I did that for a couple of reasons. One, I wanted to show that it was adoptable. That a method, I'm an old methods and tools guy. That was my title back at AT&T, was Director of Methods and Tools for that software, case tool effort that I was involved with. And what I mean by that is, before there's a tool, there should be a method, right? Because otherwise, what are we doing? Why are we doing it? Why are we building a tool, right? Same thing with any application. If we're just building applications and features and functions to build features and functions, and we haven't figured out what capabilities our customers need, then we're really going to miss the boat and the product's going to fail. So with value stream management, with all these great tools, and there's a lot of really good ones out there, we need a method. And when you go back to what value stream management was really about, it is a strategy for implementing lean improvements as a strategic initiative. It is part of your portfolio investment planning activities. So what we would do is we would start with the business strategies and goals and objectives set forth by the chief executives. And then we translate that into programs that are funded and invested in through the portfolio management process. And in that portfolio management process, using, for example, the architectural runway concept that SAFe promotes, right? There are some things that we have to do that really aren't contributing directly to a specific product that we're selling to a customer. Some of it's just plain infrastructure, manufacturing plants, computing systems and environments and applications. Never going to get sold to a customer, but we have to have it to run our business and to run it most efficiently as a lean pipeline flow, right? All the different value streams that we have. And I would ask people to go back and look at a book written by James Martin, who was an original case guru. He was the founder of KnowledgeWare. It was bought out by Fran Tarkenton back in the day. And he wrote a book called The Great Transition. And the book is fundamentally about value streams. There's a whole chapter devoted, I think it's chapter 8, devoted to value streams. And he identifies 17. And his work evolved off of work by John Davenport, a Harvard business professor, who had looked at a number of companies like IBM and some others, and he had identified what they were referring to internally as value streams. The term value stream was actually created or coined, if you will, by Womack and Jones in a Harvard Business Review article in 1994, about 6 months before James Martin's book came out. But fundamentally, James Martin wrote about value streams management, or value streams anyway, as being the enablers of a business from a process perspective, and very much in line with the diagrams that Al Shalloway shows, where he shows vertical hierarchical functions, right? And we manage our organizations that way. But the flow of work and the flow of information is horizontal. And that creates a lot of problems. And so what happens is we build our processes around the people and the management structures to protect the fiefdoms. It's true, right? We don't build our processes to support the flow of value. And that's what lean was fundamentally about. And you can still do it in a hierarchical, vertical organizational structure, but you've got to focus on the flow across the functions, functional departments, and you probably need to put somebody in charge of it as a value stream manager, right? So value stream management is a discipline. And the first interesting thing that they make a point of in their methodology, this is Don Tapping and his folks, is make a commitment to lean. If you're not going to make a commitment to lean, you're not going to commit to value streams, and you're not going to commit to value stream management. The next thing you want to do is identify the value streams. So again, you want to kind of do that just like you would any value stream. You're going to look at it organizational wide. You're going to say, where's our bottlenecks? Where's our waste? Where's the things that would have the biggest impact to improving our organization? And guess what? It's probably not going to come down as build a DevOps pipeline. It's not going to get articulated that way. It's going to get articulated as a need to reduce the cycle time in a certain activity, or maybe move information around more effectively in the right type of information, the right hands at the right time. It's going to be things like that where IT enables another value stream. All right. And so we want to do that kind of assessment, and we're going to identify multiple opportunities. We're going to prioritize just like we would in Agile. In a product backlog, we're going to say which ones add the most bang for the buck. All right. So we're going to select our value stream improvements that will give us the most impact in terms of how we support our customers from concept to delivery, right? As our value stream management initiative. Guess what the third activity is? We're going to go back to Lean, and we're going to learn about Lean, because we're not going to believe that people just necessarily know what we're talking about. So we're going to spend some time learning about Lean. What I mean by that is we're going to take that affected value stream. We're going to look at the flow. We're going to look at the people that are impacted. We're going to make sure we've got a management structure in place that manages the flow. And we're going to teach them about Lean. All right. Then once we get into that, then we'll start our current state value stream mapping. And this is important, right? We want to know how we do things today. The worst thing in the world you can do, from my experience, is long-term. I started out in business process engineering in software. Worst thing to do is just go improve something because you can, right? Because all you're going to do is just make what you're doing that's wrong more efficient. So you're going to be efficiently wrong, or wrong more efficiently and more quickly. So that's not good. So you want to look at what you're doing, and then you're going to figure out what metrics you need to analyze your performance in the value stream against the strategic goals that justify the investment in the value stream initiative. And then we are going to use those metrics to start doing our future state mapping. And we're going to say, what can we do? What we improve? And we're going to create our Kaizen bursts, or basically improvement initiatives. And we're going to prioritize those just like we would any backlog item. They probably should go in the same backlog items and managed as part of the larger portfolio of items that software, in this case, group has to do. And so we're going to then go back, and we're going to talk to our management, and we're going to, hopefully I've been talking to them the whole way anyway, and inform them, okay, we do need to improve our CI/CD flow capabilities and these value streams so that we can address this problem. Maybe, but it may be more likely that we're just going to build some sort of features and functions in the existing, maybe SAP application, or Cerner application, healthcare where I'm at, or something along those lines, or we're going to build a new application to support some part of the business. Or maybe it's a new enhancement to a product, like a nav system update to our, I drive a Ford 150, so to my Ford 150 pickup. So these improvement initiatives can take many forms. All right, and then we're gonna create our Kaizen plan. So we're gonna say, given the money that we have, the amount of money that investment can be, or the investments that the management team can make in us right now, what can we afford to do and what priority? So again, we're doing the same thing we did when we started our value stream planning, but now we're doing it at a local level and improving whatever it is we've identified that we need to improve. And we implement that plan, and then it never stops. We keep going back and we start the cycle over again. So in that case, it's a lot like Agile. It's an iterative looping process, but it's a strategic level. It's not a tactical level, right? Do you do things at a tactical level with Lean? Sure you do. All right, there's things that we can do that are simple and that don't cost a lot of money or resources. But you don't go implement a DevOps pipeline capability across a large government agency like I'm involved in through mandate, because there's significant investments. We have tool chains to buy. They have to go through a FedRAMP process to make sure they pass the security protocols. They have to be able to be approved by the TRM process to make sure that they are in fact gone through the governance process effectively for the organization, and that they're approved and there's funding made available to procure them. And then from there, then the teams can start, building out. But then we've got the whole issue of configurations, right? So again, in my real-time example, we brought in an engineer, WizKid, to build CI/CD pipelines in our team factories, if you will, configuration factories. And we asked them to build a mock-up in our company's environment, which he did in about a day. Complete CI/CD tool chain using the tools that our client has. But then reality hit. We brought him into our team, and he's working with our other 4 or 5 guys who are doing this kind of thing. And we spent 3 or 4 months just working through all the issues, getting the budgets, getting the approvals, getting the configuration set up because of the way the environment works internally within our clients' networks, and working through all of these things. So we've spent several months. Are we really going to expect the software development team to do that work? Their job is to build software applications in support of our customers, not to build software factories and configure, their test and production environments on the fly and figure out how to do that. It's a different skill set. Looks similar, but it'd be like going into a manufacturing facility and telling the people, the operators there, you're going to spend the next couple of months figuring out how to build the next generation factory. No, you don't do that. You hire experts to come in and do that for you and let them do what they do well, which is build the product and come up with the improvements. So why are we doing that to our software developers? We can't be doing that, all right? And by the way, those software developers that are involved in the value stream management initiatives now need to treat the value streams as their customers. And they need to be looking at what they can do to make the value stream flows more effective on the horizontal flows that are going across all the departments in the organization, not just IT. So that's the premise of my book. That's why I came out with such a potentially contentious statement that this will be a short-lived industry if we don't recognize that and figure it out real quick. Value stream management cannot be just about improving IT value streams. We've got to look across the organization. And it's going to get prioritized with the funds available, just like everything else.
Well, one of the questions I've got is, so how have you been able to convey that most effectively at the organization you're at, or other organizations that you've either been at, or
So now I'm limited because I'm an internal consultant. I have to work on the things that my team is allowed to work on. But yeah, I did go back to my client program manager and said, we should be doing this. We should be doing value stream mapping for what it takes to go from the current state to a future state in our client for a software product team, one of those 400 plus software product teams, to actually have a working factory that they can stand up testing environments on the fly, because we basically work for the testing organization. So I'm actually doing that. But the larger opportunity I've had is when I'm talking to the other leaders in the value stream management industry. I was talking with Richard Naster just the other day, who's now over ServiceNow, and he gets it. Lance Knight at Connect All, he gets it. I believe the people of ServiceNow generally get it. Digital AI, I believe they get it. I think they understand that. I'm not sure they know yet how to do that. And I would even go so far as to say it may not be entirely their job to do it. It may be more our job, more the job of the people here within PMI and within SAFE, the Lean Enterprise Institute, Leanfoot, those are organizations, because fundamentally it's the method that you employ. It's going to have the greatest impact in terms of figuring out how to employ IT value streams effectively across the other organizational value streams. Again, remember, James Martin identified 17 value streams. John Davenport before him found 11, I think, at IBM, and 13 in a large insurance industry, and so on. So it can vary. It depends on what you do, and what you do is driven by your competitive advantage or how you go to market. So there is no fundamentally one way to do a value stream. They can look similar, but there's no one way to do it, a given value stream. But there's common value streams, and then we improve them for competitive advantage in our own particular environment, whatever that might be. All right. So I think people get it, but I think employing a strong value stream management is going to get organizations to start saying, well, why can't I use these very same tools that have such great data capture data analytics. I can create a common data model across all the activities in my value stream and use the same analytic tools then to measure performance across the entire value stream from concept to delivery, right? And then also, we can't forget that value streams themselves interconnect. So again, in software, we see this a lot. We build software products that are extending maybe SAP or Cerner or some application, or building applications to run our business. So value streams don't stand alone, even the operational ones. They're usually connected by DevOps, by development oriented value stream, or there may be several. When you look at the entire pipeline flow from, again, concept to delivery, many of these value streams interconnect at more than one place. So when we do our value stream flows, we need to understand that it's not just one value stream we need to look at. Every time we have a line that goes off, an information line that goes off to another value stream, we need to look and see, okay, is that creating another area of waste or bottleneck for that other value stream or for this one, right? So it's more complex than I think a lot of people are willing to give it credit. But those that do it well, they're the ones that survive.
Yeah.
In a digital economy, we can't ignore software, because software is sold as standalone products. Software extends the features and functions of most of our products today. Not only that, it makes them extendable even after you've sold the product. That's huge from a continuing value add perspective to your clients and a monetary driver for your company. All right. And then, of course, software is used to improve our value streams internally. So we live in a digital economy. That's not going to change. And value stream management is not going to change in terms of its importance, but we've got to look at it in a broader sense. Yeah, Al, you trying to raise your question?
Oh, actually, I was wanting to ask Steve something about what you've said. That, because I know TameFlow is based on patterns and is consistent with the value stream. But Steve, I'm wondering if you think about the value stream in this way, or if you think about it in a different way and there's just compatibility.
So I would maybe, before answering that question, I would go back to what you Gary said at the beginning, because you mentioned a few things which I think are overarching, that go beyond the value stream, and that is you use the expression mental models, which is something that I work with a lot. Mental models and metrics, which are also tightly coupled, because what you measure is often what you understand. And I think that is the starting point. You need to decide what is it that you measure. We all want to have improvements, but how do you know that what you are actually measuring is an improvement and not just the appearance of an improvement?
Yeah, good point.
In that perspective, the value streams and the metrics inside the value streams are a contributing factor to the larger picture. So one question I would have is like, how do you relate the work that you're doing in the value stream space to the decision-making processes that happen, let's say, upstairs, not the C level, at the executive levels? What is the connection with them? What are the feedback loops that exist? And before answering, I'll also go back to Al's question. Now, my focus when I look at organizations is primarily the focus of theory, constraints management, which typically, in general, works very, very well with lean concepts. Goldratt took a lot of inspiration from Taiichi Ohno, so it's building on that body of knowledge. But we also have this notion, typical of TOC, that unless you're acting on the constraint, your actions will be futile. So in a way, this is also consistent with lean, that you are chasing waste, but maybe it's more aggressive because many actions that you would undertake if you do not know about the constraints are waste that you do not know about, so you cannot actually chase them.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Good. I was just going to quick comment there. Let's be honest, a lot of the metrics are driven by some sort of management objective and not by flow, right? So that's the first thing to ask yourself. Is this just something somebody wants because it helps them because somebody above them said they need it? Or is it really fundamentally doing something to improve, work and information flow? So that's
there's the expression of vanity metrics, that
Exactly.
people show off,
Exactly. So my general answer to you in terms of metrics, right? There's the DORA-4, of course, but people need to understand the DORA-4 really are about looking at one DevOps organization compared to another. So who are the leaders and how well are they doing? It doesn't really say anything about how those organizations are doing in terms of the enterprises they work for, right? And so they do have rapid flows. They have relatively lower costs and things of that nature, but they're represented by lower mean time between failure and faster flows, real acceleration, if you will. In our organizational value streams, we can apply the same strategies that we apply with our backlog. We only have so much time and we only have so much money that we can invest on things to do. And there's always a bigger backlog of things to do, generally speaking, than we have time or money to do. So part of the role of a product owner, in this case, a value stream management owner, if you will, right, is we've got to look at the product backlog and we've got to say, from our customer's perspective, what do they value? They're going to value the things that reduce the cost. They're going to value the things that get them the product features they want in the most timely manner, all right? They're not going to want to pay for things like generating reports if they don't have to, right? They don't, or the vanity metrics, as you were talking about a minute ago, Steve. They're not interested in those things. It doesn't do a darn thing for them, so they don't care, right? And we have to look at it exactly in that way. In terms of feedback loops to the executives, I think, that happens ideally for those organizations that have gone this route through portfolio management, because that is supposed to connect investments with corporate strategies and then executed tactically at the project level or the product development level, right? So we have to have that feedback loop actively involved with the executives. And if something changes, and things change, right? And we recognize that something else become a higher priority, customer priorities have changed, market dynamics have changed somehow, competitive have changed, that we've got to go back and reset those priorities. I think the effective way to do that is you've got to have a direct connection through your program manager or product manager, whatever level you're operating at, back to the portfolio managers, because they've got to look at it in terms of the longer term strategies. And they're the ones who are supposed to be responsible for that. At a tactical level, the things that we can do in our time and budgets, people are making those decisions every day. And we do need to move to the lowest level possible decision-making, right? And so there are lots of things that can be done at an agile team level or DevOps team level or even a value stream level that are within their realm of authority and responsibility. But buying a new tool chain is not, okay? Integrating a new tool chain is not. Even integrating a new tool chain and buying it probably is not. Let's be honest. They're probably going to have to go back and ask for some more dollars to do that. And there has to be a feedback loop that lets them go do it. And it's going to have to be judged in terms of the portfolio strategies. Does it support the larger strategies, investment strategies that we have? Or do we need to put it off? Maybe it needs to be in a different planning horizon, right? Or maybe it just doesn't fit. There's not enough bang for the buck that we just got to tell people. And believe me, when I started Texas Instruments, they were brutal about it, and I loved it, right? I went to AT&T and NCR after that. I mean, those were companies been around for a long time, and they have their different cultures. AT&T plays with kid gloves, but boy, they play a hard game. NCR plays with real gloves, and they play a brutal game. So all different cultures, but they were all fundamentally the same, which is if it didn't fit the strategy, you didn't get the funding. But if you did, you got all the funding and support you needed. And companies, that's on the executive team. And the executive managers cannot, remove themselves from their responsibilities. I'm going to say this very precisely, very clearly. I cannot tell you how many programs I've come into where the client has given us some sort of high-level strategic objectives and felt that that was their requirements list. It's not. We know it's not, right? In the Agile community, we especially know it's not, all right? We've got to do a lot more digging and get down to figuring out what capabilities are required. What does that look like? We're going to probably do some prototyping. We're going to get something in their hands, and we're going to demand that they give us feedback so that we know we're on the right track. And then I used to always say this. I started using XP in my teams back in '98. It was like brand new, right? And I swore I would never go back until one of my government contractors forced me back to waterfall. But it's another story for another day. But I swore I'd never leave Agile again because my customers loved it. But I'm not going to kid you, it wasn't always easy to get their attention either because they've got their day jobs. But you've got to. But I cannot tell you how many times they would look at something we did and the lights would go off. You could literally see that little, light go off above their head like, oh, I didn't know I could do that. Can I do this? Can I do that? Can I do that? And we'd have to go, well, yeah, if you told us you wanted to do that, you could do that. So then it's got to go in the priority, the backlog, right? But that's what happens when people see things, then the lights turn on, right? And they start going, oh, okay, this is what I can do. But executive management, it's the same thing. We need to have the feedbacks and they've got to make themselves available. We go back and show them what we're doing in translating their requirements and say, is this kind of what you had in mind? And they're going to go through the same process. They're humans just like us, right? And they're going to look at it and they're going to go, nah, it's not hitting the mark. Or they're going to go, oh yeah, but can I do this and this and this? And they go, yep, goes in the product backlog. Okay. Not an easy answer, not a straightforward answer, but it is fundamentally the only answer I know to make it work. And when your executives check out, you're in trouble.
So,
and
Bill
I say that because it's happened to me. You guys are smiling. I think it's happened to you too.
So you kind of touched on this, and Al put something in the chat already, but Bill's asking, how would you say the value stream manager differs from the product owner? Al's tied in also not only the product owner, but the product manager. And I guess inside of that also we could say, where's a typical portfolio manager? So maybe your thoughts on that.
Okay. Yeah, so they're different roles. As a long-term product manager myself, right? I think certain organizations trivialize the role, and I say that across the board for the Agile community. They simply trivialize the role of what's involved, and that's why you see so many different definitions for product owners. Fundamentally in Agile, if you're at a small team level, all the product owner can do is whatever the product manager told them to do. If they do anything else, they're going to be in trouble because the product manager is fundamentally responsible and owns that product and more importantly, the P&L for that product. So unless you give the product owner P&L responsibility, we're kidding ourselves. They have limited authority. The best they are is a translator of customer requirements. And then even then we know that we need to get our software developers involved with a lot of those assessments, working with the customers and really working down on our user stories and our acceptance criteria. And that's the important thing. We can't halfway do our acceptance criteria. I was going to use a more colorful term, but I caught myself. Take the time to do your acceptance criteria so you know what good looks like, and then build it. So depending on how you manage, how you define it, right? The product owner at a team level is responsible for making sure the product backlog gets refined, that they're making priorities based upon the feedback they're getting from customers and probably from product management and product marketing, all right? The product managers, if you will, when there is such a thing, is probably going to be a large product. And they're a glorified product owner, except that they're working across multiple teams, and they may employ more than one product owner at a local team level to ensure that their vision for the product is being carried across all the different disparate development entities, and also the operational entities, right? Because they don't own just development, they own the operations. So everything from order entry to fulfillment to partner management, all those other functions, legal agreements, all those things fall under product management in one form or another. And they're having to look at all those things, and they have to look at all those value streams that deliver all those pieces of the larger concept of delivery pie, if you will. All right. So product manager probably effectively works well when you've got multiple teams. And really, if we are really committed to lean, they really probably are a form of value stream manager. But there's going to be more than one value stream manager, because there's more than one value stream. So all those other things I talked about. So even I don't think even James Martin did enough thinking on this, because he was early. So he would call out functional areas like legal, for example, or finance or HR as a value stream. Well, they're really not. They have probably themselves multiple value streams, because how they're handling a lawsuit is different than how they're handling the activities involved with doing a partner agreement or OEM agreement and those kinds of things, just in the legal department. And then HR has many different value flows that they have to manage. In fact, in my book, I use marketing, adaptive marketing, as an example. It's kind of an interesting. I liked it because they were articulating how product management and marketing management works in a digital world, right? In a web-based environment where we're doing sales and marketing and promotions and partnership relationships and everything else in a digital format. And so they have this wheel, and I don't know that I remember ever counting them, but I'm going to guess there's probably 30 to 40 different activity flows that they define. So you could say, whether they're mini or full blown, those are all value streams in effect, because they all have a different deliverable. They all have a different activity flow. They may involve many of the same people, right? And that's okay. There's nothing inconsistent with that, even in lean, that you don't have people moving between value streams, right? But we have to identify them, we have to map them, and then we may, you're going to recognize that some of these things aren't active all the time. We're not always doing a partner agreement, but when we do, we need a lean flow, and we need to execute it quickly, and we need the systems in place that allow us to do it. So there are probably going to be value stream managers who own more than one value stream. Is the way I would have probably articulated it differently than how James Martin did. And I think it was just because he was trying to get something out very quickly to kind of explain fundamentally, how do you apply value streams to business? He called it redesign, because reengineering was already getting a bad, feeling, if you will, because not many people can afford that kind of dramatic change unless you're in a burning platform situation. It's very difficult to re-engineer entire business enterprise. But James Martin makes a point that I think is fundamentally very important. He says, talking about re-engineering process is making the mistake to think that they were ever engineered in the first place. All right. And he makes that very same concept that Josh, you alluded to, and Steve, right? They're basically, the processes were designed to protect fiefdoms. Let's be honest, right? Vertical fiefdoms. And so he preferred the term redesign because he wanted to redesign processes around flow, right? So he caught on to value stream very quickly, was an early adopter, but he applied it to the redesign of business processes, and not from protecting fiefdoms, but looking horizontally across flows. Some of those may be lived, the entire flow may live within a functional department like legal or finance or HR, but some, and many of them at some level, are interfacing with other value streams across other functional departments. And then some value streams like product development go across virtually all departments at one level or another.
The term that I prefer in this instance, rather than re-engineering or redesign is actually reconception. You have to rethink the whole thing, because oftentimes that is what is needed.
Yeah, I agree. I went with the rest of the world and basically promoted my consulting areas around business process improvements. It was easier. Sometimes you do get to see an opportunity to redesign something, from scratch, where something is just so bad. But yeah, conceptualization, I totally get that, and I'm good with that as well. But most of the time, we're doing what we do in Agile. We're making incremental improvements. Fundamentally, Scrum is just an approach to make incremental improvements towards something. Agile, incremental and iterative improvements towards something.
Yeah, and I think earlier you called them Kaizen bursts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to phrase that.
That's a Japanese term, yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Sorry, I've been going with this book especially. I keep going back into my lean roots. So I'm picking up some of the terminology, but I'm doing it on purpose, because the first thing I'm saying, if you're going to do a VSM initiative, the first thing you're going to do is make a commitment to lean. The third thing you're going to do is you're going to learn about lean. And if you're going to learn about lean, you can go to the Lean Enterprise Institute or Lean Fit, and there's a lot of good stuff there, right? But even they are going to reference a lot of the original thinkings of Tachio Acho and the other folks at Toyota, the TPS and those kinds of things. And so the Japanese nomenclature, crops in. And so I decided to retain it for the book, but then I give it in parentheses the American equivalent.
So now we're getting a little close on time, and I'm going to go ahead and just one more time add this to the stream, just so that when is this going to be released?
We have an estimate of August. I'm kind of gut feel tells me maybe it's closer to September 1, but in that time frame.
Awesome. And I guess Al, I know next week is your next rotation.
Yeah, I actually had an interesting insight a few days ago, and it's one of these things we call DINsights, or an associate of mine came up, insight like that is something I've observed for years, but it never consciously said, which was that a lack of safety, or fear, actually, I was really seeing what is fear, how does fear drive people in an organization? And I realized that one thing it tends to do is create more pressure on local optimizations, that people tend to, like you mentioned, fiefdoms. I'd say fiefdoms are kind of created and driven and held into place by fear. And just even being team-centric or even individual-centric is driven by fear. So I was thinking, well, value streams, one of the interesting things about value streams is they lay out the relationship, something that both Steve does with TameFlow and we do at the PMI with the DA value stream consultant, is we take a systems thinking approach using patterns to look at the components and how they of an organization and how they relate to each other. So in lean, creating a lean culture, rather, David Mann talks about changing culture by changing how management is done by using visual controls. And there hit to me this parallel between what if you try to reverse the process? And I've been doing this implicitly, and now I'm thinking, well, this is an explicit thing. Attend to the relationships, attend to the value stream, attend to reversing the process of siloing by improving the relationships. This is one of the ideas of lean. You focus on the work and the workflow, not on the people. And that immediately takes some of the fear away, because it shifts from a me to a we. And we see this in Kanban too. A very simple example, then I'll be quiet because we are out of time, is this idea of in a Kanban board. It's very interesting. When I started doing Kanban around 2008, 2009, what struck me, one of the biggest differences that struck me was the daily stand-up. In a Scrum, you hear, this is what I did, this is what I'm blocked, this is what I'm going to do. And there was so much fear in people, like when they failed, especially certain cultures, to say I'm blocked, I can't do this, is an act of failure for some people. It isn't really, that's just how they perceive it. Whereas in a Kanban board, you walk the board. You say, this is what we're doing. This is what we're having troubles with. This is what we're going to do. Changing that I to a we reduces fear. So I think I'd like to discuss this idea of explicitly using the relationships that are made clear in value streams to go from a group to a larger part of the value streams to reduce fear. So that's what next week's topic is going to be.
Yeah, it's a good segue. In value streams, right, what happens is when something blocks the flow, everybody crashes it. They leave what they're doing and they all come to it because it's immediately visible, particularly on a manufacturing, right?
Yeah, and it's usually involving some handoff of responsibility or knowledge.
Mm-hmm. So everybody crashes it and they stop what they're doing. They stop the line until they.
Hey, now let's work. Yeah, exactly. So that's next week's.
That's a very powerful metaphor. The ganging up, the swarming on the problem. I totally get that. The issue though is that when we get to these immaterial knowledge creating processes like software engineering, software development, there is no line to see. No, you don't see the line that's breaking down. There is no add-on cord to pull. So okay, you have visualization techniques that are like a representation of what is going on and can give you that sort of feedback loop. But what I see in modeling these processes is that where things break down is not where you see them on the boards. So you need other insights, other perspectives that allow you to trigger that sort of signal of the add-on cord. You need some active element that can provoke the people to stop what they're doing and converge on not the problem because it's not so visible, but where to use the ice hockey champions metaphor. Skate where the problem, where the puck will be. So go to where the problem will be, not where it appears to be, because in knowledge work, it's never where it appears to be. It's somewhere else. That's my.
So we're almost out of time, but let me make one final comment on that. And that's where the value stream management tool vendors say they have the answers. They're providing the visibility to be able to show, to make a knowledge-based value stream visible and do that in real time. Now, we'll see how well that works out, but that's their objective.
Well, yeah, Gary, thanks a lot for joining us today. The session was fantastic.
Thank you for having me. If I can make one final point from my book, in that book, you're going to learn a lot about what it means to be lean agile, because I don't think many people have defined it. You're going to learn about something about systems thinking. You're going to learn about value stream management. Then you're going to learn a methodology on it. You're going to learn about what makes DevOps so doggone challenging to do it. You're going to see a use case on CI/CD pipeline, how you use value stream mapping to look at your current state, future state. And then I'm going to, I introduce the tools, and then I introduce the methodologists, and then I finish up with talking about different DevOps strategies, employment strategies. A lot of material. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thank
Thanks
you
for watching or listening.
Thank you.
Thanks, and we'll see everyone next week in our next episode.
See you guys.
Bye.